Part 2. The Round Table in Action. Chapter 6. Sir Lancelot. The wars were over, but now the harder work began, which was the task of governing the kingdom wisely. The king relied on his knights for help. Success or failure rested on them. The chief of the knights was Sir Lancelot de Lac. He was the son of King Ban of Benwick, which some say was in southwest France. He was called de Lac, meaning of the lake, because it was said that when he was a baby he was stolen by the lady of the lake and brought up in her country under the waters of a lake. He had great wealth and lands throughout France. Why he chose to serve King Arthur of Britain instead of the King of France, we do not know. He came in poor clothes as someone unknown and won his fame by his own merits, and not on the strength of his family or wealth. Later on, his brother Sir Ector followed him, a different Sir Ector from the one who had brought up King Arthur. Sir Lancelot went with King Arthur on a 2-year expedition into France, Italy, and finally Rome, and returned from it the leading knight in the entire country and the king's right-hand man. No knight had ever defeated him in combat, on horse or on foot. Sir Lancelot was the champion knight of the world. He was the king's friend, and he had sworn a vow of service to the queen. Although he would help any woman, he had sworn to be no other lady's knight but the queen's, and to serve her and the king all his life. Soon after they all came home from the foreign war, the king gave Sir Lancelot the task of looking after a certain part of the country, and seeing that the laws were kept. He was to report on his district to the court at Pentecost. The countryside showed the damage that had been caused by the years of war before King Arthur brought peace to Britain. For many a mile Sir Lancelot could find no castle, farm, or house where he might shelter at night. All was wildness and silence. At last he came upon some plowed land and saw buildings. The house was built inside a protecting wall with a gate leading in under a storeroom. He was well received by an elderly couple and given food and drink for himself and his steed. When bedtime came, his host led Sir Lancelot to the room over the gate. He put his armor and sword beside him and was soon asleep on a pile of clean straw. Suddenly, a violent knocking on the gate below awoke him. He ran to the window and by the light of the moon saw a knight and 3 more riding down on him. The knight turned to face his pursuers and tackled them bravely. At this, Sir Lancelot quickly put on his armor. He tied his bedsheet to the window and slid down it. To his surprise, he noticed the single knight's shield as that of Sir Kay, the king's steward. He leaped at the 3 knights, and in 7 strokes he beat them all to the ground. "Sir Knight," they said, "we yield to you as champion of unmatched strength." He answered, "I will not accept your yielding to me. You must yield to this knight, or else I will kill you." "Fair knight, we cannot do that, because we would have beaten that knight if you had not come." "Well, you can choose whether you will die or live. If you yield, it must be to Sir Kay." So the 3 yielded to Sir Kay, and Sir Lancelot ordered them to go to the court at Pentecost and yield themselves to the mercy of the queen, saying that Sir Kay sent them there as her prisoners. Then Sir Launcelot knocked on the door with his sword. Cautiously the old couple peeped out through the hatch. To their astonishment, they saw the friendly face of their evening visitor, whom they had last seen going to bed in the gatehouse storeroom. "Sir," the old man said, "I thought you were in bed." "So I was," answered Sir Launcelot, "but I got out the window to help an old friend of mine." Then he and Sir Kay were let in, and they all ate and drank again, and went to bed in the best of spirits. In the morning, Sir Launcelot got up very early and left Sir Kay sleeping. He took Sir Kay's helmet and shield, leaving his own in their place, said goodbye, and rode off. When Sir Kay awoke and saw the famous shield with the leopards on it, he laughed and said, "Now he will upset some of the knights, because they will think he is I, and they will be bold and tackle him. While wearing his helmet and shield, I shall ride in peace. No one will dare to attack me." Sir Launcelot rode on for several days. He left behind the open country and entered a great forest. He met a lady weeping, who held his bridle and said, "On your oath of knighthood, help my brother who is badly wounded. We cannot stop the bleeding. A sorceress living in the castle here told me his wound would never be healed unless I could find a knight who would go into the perilous chapel and find there a sword with a blood-stained cloth that is laid over a wounded knight. A piece of that cloth and the sword would heal my brother if they touched his wounds." "This is a strange thing," said Sir Launcelot. "What is your brother's name?" "Sir Meliot of Logres." "He is a knight of the Round Table, and I will do anything I can to help him," answered Sir Launcelot. He followed the lady's directions and went through gloomy woods to the perilous chapel. He dismounted and tied his horse to the gate. As he went into the churchyard, he saw that the wall of the chapel was covered with shields nailed upside down, showing that their owners had been killed. His eye picked out many that he had known well at court and in the wars. His face darkened, and suddenly he was aware that below the shields there stood a line of huge, armed, black figures, taller by 3 feet than any ordinary man, and he realized that these figures had accounted for all the upside-down shields. They made no movement, but a grin of triumph came over each face as they saw another victim approaching. Sir Launcelot felt a throb of terror, but he slung his shield before him and gripped his sword and strode on. When he was finally one step away from their swords, they suddenly fell back from him. The chapel door was in front of him, and he went in. The door shut behind him, with those huge figures outside, and darkness closed around him. But in a moment, he made out a dim light, and going towards it, he saw a figure lying under a silk cloth with a sword beside it. Stooping down, he cut off a piece of silk. He felt the earth quake under him, and again his heart throbbed with fear. Taking the sword, he went down from the chapel and opened the door. There were the grim figures, and as he stepped out, they said, "Sir Launcelot, put down that sword or you will die." "Whether I die or live, you shall not get it from me by words or threats. Fight for it if you want it," answered Sir Launcelot. He went straight through them, and not one dared attack him. Outside the churchyard gate, a strange lady met him and said, "Sir Launcelot, leave that sword behind or you will die." "I shall not leave it because of threats," he answered. She replied, "If you had left it, you would never see the court or Queen Guinevere again." She asked him to kiss her hand, and he refused. She broke out in anger and was jerked and amazed him by saying that all her trouble was for nothing, because she had made this chapel as a trap to catch him, and if he had given way to fear or weakness, he would have fallen under her power and she would have killed him. But he had defeated all her spells. "God preserve me from your cunning," said Sir Launcelot, and he sprang on his horse and rode away. He found Sir Meliot's sister, and they hurried to the castle where Sir Meliot lay, pale and almost dead from bleeding. One touch of the silk and the steel closed his wounds and restored him to health. Great was the joy of the brother and sister, and they did all they could to thank Sir Launcelot. Not only had he saved Sir Meliot's life, but he had broken the power of the sorceress whose spells had caught and killed many good knights. Sir Launcelot told Sir Meliot to come to the court at Pentecost and report to the king all that had happened. Then he continued on his way. His next encounter was with another attempted trick, not of magic this time, but plain murder. As he rode under a castle wall, he heard a falcon's bells over his head, and an escaped falcon flew into an elm tree, trailing her long leashes. They caught in a bough, and as she tried to flutter off, she was jerked back and hung by the legs. Sir Launcelot was wondering how he could help her, when a lady came hurrying out of the castle and called him by name. "Sir Launcelot! Sir Launcelot! Help me to get my hawk back! If she is lost, my husband will kill me! He is so hasty! As you are a true knight, help me!" "What is your lord's name?" asked Sir Launcelot, still watching the hawk. "Sir Felot. He is a knight of the Lord of Northgales." "Well, madam," said Sir Launcelot, seeing that the hawk was in real danger of hurting himself, "as you know my name and appeal to me as a knight to help you, I will try and catch your hawk. But heaven knows I am a bad climber, and the tree is very high and with hardly any boughs to help me." A little reluctantly he dismounted and asked the lady to help him off with his armor. He put it in a pile with his arms, and clad only in a shirt and breeches, began to climb the elm. He reached for the falcon and managed to disentangle the leashes, which he tied round a stick, and then he dropped the stick, with the struggling hawk attached to it, to the ground. As soon as the lady picked up the falcon, an armed man ran out from behind a bush with a drawn sword and shouted, "Aha, Sir Launcelot! Now I have got you!" Sir Launcelot realized that the entire affair had been a trick, and he was caught in his shirt and without a sword. He was in much greater danger than he had been, even from the knights in the enchanted perilous chapel. His eye rapidly reviewed the position of the branches below him and his pile of arms on the ground. "Lady," he called, "why have you betrayed me?" "She did as I told her," said Sir Felot. So there is nothing for it, but your time is come, and I shall kill you." "You would be shamed forever, an armed knight to kill a defenseless man by trickery." "That cannot be helped," answered Sir Felot. "Do what you can." "You will be forever shamed for this, but at least hang my sword up on a branch so that I can get it, and then kill me if you can." "Not I," said Sir Felot. "I know you too well. You will get no weapon that I can keep from you." Sir Launcelot began to climb down. On his way, he broke off a tough, spiky branch. Sir Felot watched him, gripping his sword. Sir Launcelot measured the distance from the tree to his horse with his eye and climbed down. Long before Sir Felot expected it, he jumped from the tree to the further side of his horse from the enemy. He had time to scramble to his feet before Sir Felot had run around the horse, and Sir Launcelot leaped on him and smashed the sword out of his hand with his bow. He felled him to the ground, and then, seizing Sir Felot's sword, he cut off his head. The lady screamed, "You have killed my husband!" "I am not to blame," answered Sir Launcelot sternly. "You tried to kill me by lies and trickery, and now you both have paid for it." He armed himself as fast as he could, fearing that Sir Felot's soldiers might rush out of the castle on him. He got on his horse and rode away, thanking God that he had escaped that danger. After several other encounters, he arrived back at court 2 days before Pentecost. The king and all the court were very glad. There was laughing and smiling among them, and every now and then the knight who had been taken prisoner came, and Sir Kay and Sir Meliot of Logres arrived, and they all honored Sir Launcelot.